Welcome to Untold, the business podcast bringing you the best kept secrets of Utah. Utah is the number one state in small business growth over the past 25 years, and about half of employment in Utah is through small businesses. Untold brings you the up close and personal stories from amazing Utah small businesses. With me today is Kim Grob, the founding partner of Right On, a content strategy agency located here in Utah. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about your agency. And specifically, one of the things you shared with me earlier is that you had an idea behind this to reinvent kind of the typical agency model. So what did you do different? And then introduce me to the specifics of what you do at Right On.
Sure. My partner and I got our starts working for big, relatively prestigious advertising agencies that had, for Utah, it's really big because it had like 250 people at it. And it was agency of record for Intel and other big tech companies. And my partner was doing something similar in Birmingham, Alabama, where she's from. Working at a big ad agency is really fun, especially when you're young. It's highly creative. It's very stimulating. It's a great place for a creative person who might feel like they don't fit anywhere else in the world. However, it also is a high burnout job. And there are my experience and people who I've spoken with, especially women, a lot of late nights, a lot of expectations of working hard hours to get a job done for a client, turning things fast, being willing to work weekends. And there came a time when that was no longer working for me personally. And I needed a different way to work. And I had an opportunity to go out on my own as a freelancer. And I took that opportunity because I had two young kids at home and I needed to be there for them. So I took the opportunity to go freelance and took a pretty big leap. Meantime, my partner, who is actually my sister, was doing the same thing. She had left the agency, was working as a freelance writer, and trying to balance taking care of her young kids and having a career in something that she loved and that she'd really built up over the years. And that was the same with me. I mean, I built a strong career as a senior copywriter and wanted to continue going, but really didn't want to do it the way that I had been doing it. So when we started Right On, we wanted to do the same thing for other creative people. We wanted to give them a way to take their talents and the skills that they had built over the years, but be able to do it in a way that worked better for their lives. And that doesn't necessarily mean having, taking care of kids. It could be a passion. One of the folks on our team is a world-class skier and mountaineer. And, she also has other things that she's doing with her time besides working all the time.
Yeah.
And she worked at McCann, one of the biggest agencies now here in Utah. So she's got that agency expertise, but she doesn't want to give her life to the agency. So we've been trying to build a network that takes senior talent. We don't work with junior writers, and we don't really have an internship program, but really working with senior talent who've built their chops, done the hard work of working in an agency, and now have the experience to go out on their own, but don't want to or are scared to be dealing with the hassles of the business side of things, invoicing, collecting, project management, account management, all of those things that really make trying to be a freelancer hard.
Okay. So you're trying to address some of the shortcomings of working in an agency um, with the model, but also providing the support of an agency. So kind of taking the good things
Yes.
and trying to decrease some of the downsides. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
how long ago did you start it?
About 14 years ago.
14 years ago. Okay.
Mhm.
Huh. Um, so was there a moment when you and your partner um, felt like you were kind of had a big decision, like it was the point of no return? You had to say let's go all in.
Yeah. I think that honestly, when we got the very first check, so we
Mm.
got we made the website. We went out. We had some freelance clients that we could bring over, but then we started going out and getting our own clients as an agency. We got a check from our first client, and we actually didn't have the bank account set up yet. So we had, our own personal bank accounts for our freelance businesses, but we didn't have a business bank account. So I, hurried to go to the bank. And of course, I didn't want the client to know this. So I hurried and went to the bank and, got it all set up, got the signatures and got Jen's signature, my partner. She lives out of state. Um, and honestly, as soon as I put that first check in the bank, I was all in because I'm the breadwinner of our family. Failure is not an option for me. Uh, I I needed this to work, and I wasn't thinking, oh, this is an experiment that I'll try and see, and then go do something else. So, I mean, I was all in from day one, from the first check.
When you were just starting, um, what was one thing that maybe you expected it to be one way and it didn't work that way? You had, you had a misconception or you had to change the way you were thinking about it.
Well, one that stands out from the very beginning was when my partner and I decided to start it, we looked over at one another and said, hey, you're doing the same thing that I'm doing. I'm a freelance writer, and so are you. So if we join forces, we can do double the amount of work as writers that we were doing before. What we didn't factor into that was that we needed complementary skills, not the same skills.
Mm.
And it took us a few years to realize that we couldn't run a business just being two writers doing good work. We needed to understand what our strengths were as leaders and to build a company and start to put those skills into practice. Jen, my partner, is just excellent operationally and from a finance perspective. Um, I took the lead on the creative side and the creative leadership side, and that ended up being a really good fit for us. We can both switch gears and do the other part of the work, but that's how we've divided up, and it's really helped us.
Oh, okay. Okay. Um, I'm curious, you mentioned the rationale when you started Right On was that you were looking to create something different. Um, tell me a little bit about the values behind it. So, how do you express to people who come to work for you what you are shooting for or what you stand for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a few different things. Like one is the quality of the work. So we are living in a time of real commoditization of creative work.
Mm.
And we are not an agency that's going to be writing or creating content with Chat GPT. We are using AI for as almost like an editorial assistant, but
Mm.
it can't do the creative work. And so our focus is on really high-end branded quality work. So that's one of our important values. Um, Another important value is how we treat our clients. We want to treat our clients like we would treat friends. At an ad agency, a lot of times there's a feeling of like, if there wasn't a client, we could create really good work. Like when the client is really getting in the way.
They're annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've tried to think of our clients as co-creators of the work rather than barriers to doing good work. And, this is also about choosing great clients to work with and finding relationships that feel more like partnerships than, order takers or vendors. So that's another really important thing. And then the other thing is that's important for our freelance network is we make freelancing easier. We've been through the struggles of being a freelance writer or designer, strategist, and we want to make it easy for our team to do great work. So we take a lot of the hassles out of the way. And then lastly, I would say we also realize it's just work. At the end of the day, we put our family and our health first, and the work gets done after that.
Okay. I'm wondering if, for me, values really, you're not really sure if they're values until they're tested.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about a time that your commitment to those values was really tested by a client or by circumstance?
Yeah, great question. I think honestly, lately, I would say that the commitment to quality has been tested a lot just because of AI and what's happening in the creative industry. So there's a lot more curiosity with our clients and prospective clients as to how we're using or not using AI. We haven't had any clients who've wanted us to use AI to do their work, which does seem silly that you would want to pay a premium for great creative work and then ask the agency to use AI for it. But there is a lot of pressure right now, not just for our agency, but for a lot of agencies to be faster and more efficient than ever before. Where can you cut costs in order to do things more efficiently? And so I think that's been a little tension for not just for our agency, but for many creative shops. And we've held fast to that. We've done some interesting experimentation. We do a lot of sustainability reports, and one of our enterprise clients came to us and asked us if they could use their proprietary AI to give us a first draft, if we would edit the first draft based on their AI generated version. And we've just completed that experiment, and the jury's out as to whether we would do it again. We honestly, the project cost the same amount of money, so we didn't save any money, and every word had to be reevaluated. So the amount of time that the writing team and editing team spent on it to try to make it sound human and original really wasn't worth it. That said, there were some really good trade-offs. I mean, a sustainability report is often about interviewing like 15 different stakeholders. You've got to talk to people all across the corporation in terms of like what they're doing on everything from energy to waste reduction, to employee culture and satisfaction. So the AI basically took the inputs and it made it so we did not have to do those 12 interviews. Is that good or bad? From a logistical perspective, that's good, because like it's a lot of time. They're hard to schedule. These are usually senior people who, have a lot of demands on their time. From an actual output perspective, hearing people's human voices, hearing their stories like we're doing right now, that's what makes content good.
Right.
So that was lost.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see the kind of the conundrum, right? Where there's this great tool, right? How can you use the tool to potentially make things more efficient? But sounds like your first test, it didn't seem to help as much as you would initially think.
No,
Interesting.
no.
I've experimented a little bit myself with it, and I find that, like you said, it's sometimes having a starting point
Mhm.
is helpful. Like
Yeah,
it can create a nice framework to begin with, but yeah, it getting the voice right and all that. Yeah, it has a particular style, and I can pick it out very quickly.
yeah.
It's obvious when you're looking at AI output. But oh, thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I also
Um,
don't think that we should, I don't think we should skip the thinking process.
mm,
Writing and creativity is thinking. And if we skip the process of thinking in our work, then I think we really miss an opportunity to create our best work.
great point. Yeah. Huh. And sometimes the ideas come from that fusion, right, or even discussion of ideas between people
That's right.
is where the real creativity comes up. Hmm,
Yeah.
that's great. You mentioned sustainability, that you do a lot of sustainability. Is that your primary niche for Right On?
Yes, it is. And we've been working in sustainability like before sustainability was cool, basically. So, ESG had, a big, when I say ESG, I mean like this framework of environmental, social, and governance that's used to create a lot of the big corporate reports. Um, that sort of had
Uh-huh.
its heyday a few years ago, and everybody was jumping on the bandwagon. But most of the companies that we've been working with have been doing this work well before ESG was even an acronym. So we started about like 10 or 12 years ago working on corporate social responsibility reports and content for clients.
Hmm.
And we decided about 3 years ago to really reposition Right On to focus in on that work that we'd been doing for a while.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah. Was I'm curious. You mentioned that there's been an evolution in that space.
Mm.
Can you describe a little bit, like, where things were as to where things are now? Like what's
Oh,
changed?
well, so much has changed. I mean, starting back from when we were doing it for clients, it was gathering data for these reports and to report out on the work that companies were doing was almost like a manual process. And, it's like going into the dumpsters basically and seeing what waste was in there, basically dumpster diving and figuring out what the waste was in the company's dumpster, or counting up receipts, like getting all the receipts, and looking at the energy bills and stuff like that, and like adding it up. Now there's all kinds of like climate technology and tools that can help a company gather this data and analyze it and assess it. So that's one really big change. The other big change is just this framework of environmental, social, and governance reporting that's reported in a variety of different ways that organizations can choose from. But what's happened also is that there's been a rise of greenwashing, where companies are, overhyping things they've done without the data to back it up. And then recently, with our new administration's, less than friendly perspective on climate issues there and social issues like DEI, there's been what's called a green hushing trend,
Oh,
where folks are really, they're doing the work, but they're not talking about it and communicating it the way they did a few years ago, even, and they're getting pressure from a lot of different sides. They're getting pressure from climate activists and consumer groups that are accusing them, often rightfully so, of greenwashing. But then on the other side, they're getting, anti-DEI activists, questioning, their programs, or, governmental agencies from, state to national, telling them, what you're doing isn't even legal at this point. And so between the fear of greenwashing, the fear of, government retribution, a lot of brands are really pulling back on what they're communicating. Either they're reversing course, and we've seen that happen, and just saying, well, we don't do DEI anymore, or, we're taking a step back from these climate targets that we set, and we're not going to try to meet them anymore.
okay.
But the companies that, we're typically working with are still doing the work, but some of them want to do it more quietly now to avoid being in the crosshairs.
So is this, so my daughter is a scientist, and I think there's been some guidance about not using certain words in government publications and government agencies. So is this, you're saying, is this the same sort of thing that's extended into this area of corporate sustainability communication?
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of this is actually a good thing. So the good part about this is that a lot of the words are relatively meaningless. And part of what brands and organizations need to change is they need to stop using the jargon, the technical terms, the broad terms that don't hold a lot of meaning for regular folks, and start using language that that all of us can understand and connect to. So, changing the language about, like, how we talk about, DEI is a tricky one. I don't even know if it's like, maybe for the editing purposes, like, I don't even know if, like, I have the best authority to speak about that. But from a climate perspective, getting us away from some of the scientific jargon that people are using to communicate climate is a good thing.
So I'm hearing that maybe whereas the downside might be that there's a danger of kind of creating negative incentives toward people doing sustainability activities, but that there might be an upside in that maybe this leads to clearer communication, more specificity, or better language to actually describe what's going on. Is that?
Yes. I
Okay.
also think that a lot of what organizations are doing matters to people, whether you are a conservative or a progressive thinker. But the way that people working in this space might, like, automatically talk about it can have a kind of triggering vibe for people. So, and you may not even, if you're working in this space all the time and talking about it all the time, you might not realize it, but even words like green, calling something green, that isn't going to play as well with a conservative audience, maybe, as a more progressive audience. But if we're talking about, like, conservation and protecting the land, that's something that we can all get behind. So I think it's really important for people communicating their programs to think about language that appeals to more broadly, and messaging frames that appeal more broadly.
Interesting. So, I saw I saw you post something on LinkedIn about a naughty list for B2B sustainability
Ah,
marketing. I'm wondering, is this what we're talking about? Is this,
yeah.
or is this some of these throwaway words and
Yes.
things that basically, okay, tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
Well, I mean, you know, there's so many. So there's, I went to this healthcare summit last summer at Sundance, and it brought like some of the really amazing luminaries in sustainability in large health organizations together to talk about sustainability. And I was lucky enough to get invited as the communications specialist. But as I'm looking at the papers that they've written and the marketing that they're doing and the content that they're putting out, they're talking a lot about like things like decarbonization. And I'm like, we need to talk about ending pollution instead, and think
Mm,
about these things, just translate the science into simple human language. So
mm.
in addition to the political polarization of certain words and phrases, it's also just like, how can we make this simple so that people understand what we're trying to tell them?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's funny. I was on a walk with my wife last night, and she mentioned a headline, and she asked the question like, "What do they mean by that?" And I said, "Well, it's a headline. It's not intended to be informative." you know, like yeah. So it seems what I'm hearing you say is that sometimes language can um, lose its intended purpose of achieving communication and clarity, and just be used to be provocative or for other it starts to take on other purposes. It's almost like identifying language or or uh, you know language intended to get you to click, right, or to read something, right, but it's not helpful, it's not
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah, and I
Mm.
think, with climate issues, if people don't understand what you're saying, they're going to tune out really fast.
Yeah.
Or if they're turned off, if another thing that happens is that there's talk about things like the climate crisis and climate emergency, those kinds of framings don't perform nearly as well as more optimistic realities. We can't be Pollyannish about it. Things are changing and we need to address them. But if you're showing like world on fire pictures, it's overwhelming for most of
Mm.
us. And we just kind of shut off and move on because we can't go there every day, right? And but there are other ways. There's a lot of other ways that we can frame this around hope and optimism that can bring more people into the conversation and help them to see how they can take action.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It is overwhelming. I think sometimes some of these big topics are so much bigger than one person, but at the same
Yeah,
time, if one person's not doing something, right, that adds up to, keeping us stuck, right?
that's right.
If none of us are willing to do anything, right, then nothing will change regardless of the topic that we're talking about. Um, yeah, I'm curious. So, given the context of the changes that you've seen already, like, what's your forecast? Like, what do you think that we'll be talking about in 5 years? Any idea about how the sustainability area might be shifting?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that let's think ahead to like, this works, that we get more organizations speaking in simple human language and using stories um, to communicate climate issues and actions that people can take. And we get more people talking one-on-one with their family
Mm,
members, when they're out and um, about climate in a way that's not polarizing and that is more understandable. What I think starts to happen is that more people can see their place in in climate action, and it's not an activist thing. It's not something for politicians to solve, because it's going to take corporations, it's going to take organizations, it's going to take government, it's going to take small, local actions, hyper local actions, and one-to-one actions of people talking with other people about what's happening. So I think we start to see our place in making an impact, and we start to see that there is a positive way forward. We have technology, we have science, we have knowledge to change things, but we need everybody talking about it everywhere they go, to not only to our politicians, but also to our neighbors, our friends, and the communities we live in.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it seems like no single party in society, right, can fix this. The government can't mandate. Corporations can't do it in a bubble, right? Because they have to compete, right? They can't do things that put them at a competitive disadvantage, and individuals, right, can't do it without support from the ecosystem or from the from the broader society. So, these complex problems take, I think, a wide net, really, to come up with effective solutions. So I'm curious for your agency, like when you look ahead, how, what are the implications for you? So what's your focus, or what are you thinking about in terms of your agency over the next 5 years? And what will your business look like in 5 years?
Well, I'll start from a sustainability communications perspective. Our big goal is to start to get organizations to think beyond their annual sustainability report. What happens a lot is that there's a kind of one and done approach to sustainability communications. We have a report, we've gathered the data, we want to share this with our stakeholders and various audiences. They spend 6 to 9 months creating the report, and then they take a 3-month break, and then we start again next year. But that's not a communications plan. That isn't how you can do what we were just talking about, which is really, create a rally cry for your organization and get more people to help you create the change that you're trying to create. So what we want to see happen is more organizations creating a steady drumbeat of content throughout the year. And you can use that big rock of your sustainability report as the anchor piece, and then you can build smaller pieces from that and keep your content storytelling going throughout the year. So rather than putting out one big 90-page PDF, why aren't more organizations speaking about this regularly on their social channels, through video, through thought leadership, through their leaders talking about it at events and blog posts, etc. So that's what needs to happen, and that's as marketers, that's what we're uniquely poised to help them do, because we've been doing it for B2B tech and every other every other sector for as long as marketing's been around. But we need to take some of that from the marketing playbook and bring it to sustainability teams and show them how to do the same thing that great organizations and B2B companies have been doing since the beginning of marketing.
Okay. So marketing, used to be like initiatives or campaigns, and it's evolved into a more holistic strategy and communication activities that are constant. Right? They're going on, and you're describing the same thing with sustainability, moving from a report to a true strategy, to something that is ongoing and not event based.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And I think that, you know, looking ahead to 5 years, like you suggested, the organizations that can do that are going to emerge as the leaders because, the political winds are going to shift again. We've been around long enough to know that these things come and go. So the
Yeah.
companies that stay true to their core values and messages and keep putting out the content and telling the stories are going to emerge as the leaders in the coming years.
And, for companies like that, why would you advocate? What would you tell them is the advantage to making that shift?
Mm-hmm. Um, there's two really big advantages, and that's what your customers want and what your
Mhm.
employees want. So even though, the political landscape has changed, customer sentiment has not. So customers are still buying more from brands that they perceive to be doing good for the environment and for the people who work for their companies and for their communities. And customers continue to want to buy from those brands. Um, and same with employees. Employees are increasingly looking for companies that share their values, that are doing good in the environment and not just taking from the environment. So I think it's the right business strategy from from an employee and customer perspective.
Yeah, no, I really resonate with that employee piece because I work a lot with companies that, are really trying to create a great place to work. And part of that is really believing that you're doing good.
That's right.
Um, and that part of that can be, right, the impact to sustainability, the environment, to, what kind of planet are we leaving our children, that kind of thing,
That's right.
is important to a lot of people, even though they may not agree on the tactics, right, or the
Exactly.
language. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great. I'm curious. Yeah, you started this agency with your sister. Like, where are you going? Like, what would success look like to you? Or what are what's the legacy you're trying to build? Like, what's the end game?
Yeah. Um, I think, well, let me start with a quote from, do you know Sir David Attenborough? He does all the nature programs.
Oh yeah, he's inescapable.
Yeah. Well, he has a quote that says, I don't know if you've heard him say this, where he said, saving the planet is now a communications challenge. And
Hmm.
that's where we are. And I believe that firmly, that we've got the science, we've got the technology, but we're really lagging on how we communicate taking action on climate issues and getting people to believe that they have agency. And so the legacy for Right On is to help as many organizations, large and small, corporate and startups, NGOs, everybody who communicates sustainability, to help them find the tools and the strategies so that they can communicate it in a way that people are going to understand it, hear it, take action, so that we can, what we need to do is really change the way people think, feel, and act, which is always marketing's job. And if we can do that for environmental and social issues that are existential right now, then I feel like we'll have played a small part in creating legacy.
And what if you were able to achieve that? Like, what would that mean for you personally?
Yeah. Well, I think that what I'd love to see for Right On is that it continues to thrive without me. So I'd like to see new leadership eventually with new ideas and new perspectives that they can bring to Right On, to continue its trajectory as, the world changes.
That's great. Yeah. So I'm curious when you think back to the moment when you were, talking with your sister about, doing something different. If you were speaking to yourself back then or to someone else, maybe that's at a turning point, right, in their life about considering an entrepreneurial move, is there any advice you'd offer them?
Yeah. Well, for a few things. First of all, I would say, talk to a lot of people, talk to prospective customers, people who you want to serve, and really listen to what they have to say and let them help you shape what your offering is going to be. So,
Mhm.
that time period of going on a listening tour and talking to the people you hope to serve is really valuable, I think. So I would say that's one thing for sure. I would say once you do settle on that, put yourself out there early and often. And what's the word? I don't want to say aggressively. I want to say confidently. We waited a long time to really tell our story. We were very busy telling everybody else's story. And I think maybe there was some self-doubt too of like, wait, are we sure that we're the right, this imposter syndrome, like, wait, do we really have anything to say? It doesn't really matter. Like if you say the wrong thing or if your idea isn't, pitch perfect yet, it's more important to continue thinking and speaking it aloud. That's how you improve your thinking, is by writing it down and saying it to other people. So I would say talk about what you're doing in writing, in videos, in podcasts, on stages, if you can find a way to get on them, everywhere you can. Um,
Yeah.
but then lastly, I would say don't overthink it. Just learn on the job. Just start and learn as you go.
Mm. Fantastic. That's great. Well, thank you for spending some time with me talking about Right On today, Kim. Um, it's been a pleasure talking to you. If someone wanted to learn more about what you do, where would they go to learn more about it?
Yeah, you can go to our website. It's wearerighton.com. So that's WEARE, right, RIGHTON.com. We are active on LinkedIn. So we have a page for the company, and then you can follow me and my partner, and we're posting often about this. We have a newsletter too that goes out every 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. Thanks again for your time. It's been great to get to know a little bit more about you and about your agency and what you do.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of it.